The Green Bay Correctional Institution was built 125 years ago, and it's showing its age.
GBCI is not safe. GBCI is not secure.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent over the years to study the prison's problems, turning up infrastructure failures, ADA code violations, and security concerns.
There's a path to closing facilities.
Local leaders are pushing to close the prison and favor redeveloping the prime real estate.
There is simply not a good reason not to close GBCI.
And yet, despite growing support to shut down the prison, GBCI remains open for business with no plan in place for change.
Legislators, departments, governors have been negligent in not properly addressing this issue.
What is the future of Green Bay's prison? Welcome to a Fox 11 Town Hall. I'm Mark Leland. Green Bay Correctional Institution in Allouez is the second oldest prison in the state, behind Waupun Correctional. Consultants who have evaluated all the prisons in Wisconsin, though, place GBCI in the high priority category for closure. In the next half hour, we'll hear from, among others, the acting secretary of the Department of Corrections, Kevin Carr, Jim Rafter, the Allouez Village president where GBCI is located, and State Representative David Steffen, whose district includes the prison and who has been spearheading the effort to close the prison and replace it with a new one to address a variety of concerns with GBCI. But first, to better engage in the discussion about closing the prison, a little background on the facility to set the stage. Green Bay Correctional sits on more than 60 acres of prime real estate in Allouez, overlooking the Fox River. Opened in 1898, it is the second oldest institution in the state behind Waupun Correctional. But early results from a $600,000 study of all the state's prisons, funded by taxpayers, reveal Green Bay Correctional is the one that needs to be replaced.
One of the amazing facts is there is only 5% of that facility that doesn't need repair.
State Representative David Steffen has been pushing to close GBCI based on a 2009 study. That study found it needed more than $142 million in repairs. With inflation, the cost of repairs climbed to $200 million by 2019. The last study done by two architectural engineering firms in 2018 found GBCI with failing infrastructure systems and operational inefficiencies. The report details that some buildings have been completely abandoned due to concerns over their physical conditions. It makes note of the layout of the prison, creating safety and security concerns for staff and inmates. And the maximum security housing is overcrowded, not ADA compliant, and replacement is deemed a high priority.
There are mission-critical issues that are existing within GBCI. We need to make sure that we have an environment that is safe for those employees.
Since 2009, tens of millions of dollars have been spent to keep the facility operating, but the current study finds 76% of the facility still needs major remodeling work or to be replaced. Stepin says the state has simply failed to address the prison's critical needs for years.
Has the state been negligent in getting this thing replaced?
Yes. Legislators, departments, governors have been negligent in not properly addressing this issue.
Then Governor Scott Walker wasn't interested in spending the projected $300 million for a new prison. Newly elected Governor Tony Evers indicates he understands the need for a new prison.
Clearly we have a facility there that is going to be difficult to continue to use because of its age and inadequacy.
Evers, though, did not include replacing GBCI in his first two-year budget plan. But he also did not include any money for repairs.
Gives me hope because it means that the governor's waiting to hear from the studies to understand what is the best path forward.
Rafter spoke to Evers following his election win about the prison and the village's wishes to have it decommissioned.
He was inclined to agree with me that something needs to be done with GBCI and that it's a 100-plus-year-old facility in major need of repair.
Estimates show the state could sell the prison land for up to $50 million. The village has a vested interest in getting rid of the prison. It commissioned a study to evaluate the economic potential of the land being developed into commercial and residential properties.
They estimate an infusion of approximately $138 million a year into the local economy. We had those numbers updated in 2021. In 2021, it was about $154 million. I'm guessing today it's probably somewhere around $170 million of economic input. That's extremely valuable to the Village of Allouez, Brown County, the education system, everyone.
Allouez, Brown County, and the state would all benefit from property and sales tax. Allouez could easily generate $1 million a year in tax revenue from private development. Right now, it collects no tax. Village Administrator Brad Lang says the prison costs Allouez money in the amount it has to pay the Brown County Sheriff's Department responding to incident calls at the prison.
Well, you're looking at that $65,000 to $100,000 a year. So you have that cost, but then you have the inability to develop that land.
In 2019, Steffen introduced a bill that would authorize selling GBCI and have the state build its own replacement prison in Brown or a neighboring county. He met with, at the time, Governor Evers to pitch the plan.
I can tell you he was communicating that he is open to this idea. He is, I think, still a long ways away from making any type of commitment on this issue.
The bill went nowhere. With confirmation hearings taking place for Acting Department of Corrections Secretary Kevin Carr and GBCI making national headlines for lockdowns and a mice infestation, we caught up with Steffens again to ask, what's the future of Green Bay's prison?
If we could start back in 2009, the study that was done that indicated there were issues there, a lot of issues with the housing of the inmates, and they recommended in there to build new housing on the site, but it would cost $142 million. Why didn't they move forward with that?
It's a big expense, and even though Department of Corrections is our largest agency, those type of dollars make governors and legislatures think twice. I can tell you that there isn't a lot of popularity, a lot of interest in putting money into prisons, and so this is one of those things that unfortunately just got kicked down the road, and it's unfortunate because the issues are just compounding upon themselves at this point, and the structure is now becoming unstable and unsafe, and that type of environment is bad for inmates, staff, and ultimately the taxpayers.
You've come up with a couple of proposals along the way. You've been kind of spearheading this whole let's replace the prison. It's been gaining some momentum, wouldn't you say, over the years?
Absolutely. I have to tell you, the first meetings I had down in Madison with my colleagues and corrections folks and Governor Walker at the time, a lot of skepticism. They thought I was on some sort of odyssey here trying to figure out a way to help my community. But the facts speak for themselves, and we now have 2 independent studies, architectural and operational and engineering studies, that have indicated that GBCI is in need of being closed. It's just a pure numbers game. You can't replace this prison in a way that they're looking to do their expansion. So replacement is the only option that's left on the table. And having 2 independent architectural and engineering reports done clearly states that.
You, in 2021, tried to put in a budget request of $5 million to at least find a new place, purchase some land for the future.
So I was working with a new governor and wanted to meet him halfway on this. There's been a lot of politics that have been injected into this issue unnecessarily, in my opinion. And so what I want to do is provide him an opportunity to just start the process. I think what people need to know is that it takes at least 4 years to build a new prison. You have to find the site, you have to do the design, you have to do the construction, and then you have to do the move. And so that's at least a 4-year process. So what I did is included $5 million in our state budget for the governor to start that process. Just find the land, start the design work. At least get us a year and a half, 2 years down that road, and then we can continue the discussion as to what this prison looks like, how many beds, the services that are there. All those are important discussions, but we need to take a step. And unfortunately, Governor Evers had a different thought on that.
Acting DOC Secretary Kevin Carr recently was talking before the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee and said there is a path to closing prison facilities in the state. The Department of Corrections turned down a request for a one-on-one interview with Carr, but this is what he told legislators when asked by State Senator Andre Jacques about the possible closure of GBCI and Waupun.
Could you tell us where we're at in the planning process? Because GBCI, Waupun, they're not getting any younger.
Thank you for the questions, Senator. I can tell you that I've been having discussions with the governor's office about the future of those two facilities. We are having those discussions, and that is where we are on that right now. As far as a concrete plan, I think from a very high level, our administration believes that, there's a path to closing facilities. And I'm not going to even just limit it to those particular two, because even though I do agree about their age and all those other things, I don't want to cause any alarm to any communities that could be impacted. So I'm just going to use facilities. There is a path to closing facilities that we think is best, which is creating criminal justice reform on a bipartisan basis that will lower our prison population to the point that it will enable us to seriously consider closing a facility. That is the preferred direction. Now that's over here. There are others who have another path that they would like to take, which involves the building of a new facility for upwards of $750 million. That is another path that some might want to take. It's not our preferred path, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for us to have a frank and honest discussion about how certain outcomes could be achieved that met the goals of all the parties involved.
Yeah, this is a brick and mortar discussion we should be having, not a law and order discussion. And so injecting criminal justice reform, social justice, prison justice, all those different political elements, it has no business in this. We have a problem structurally, operationally, mechanically with a building that is on the verge of catastrophe. And so we need to be acting a little more seriously, put politics aside, and just do the right thing and have a discussion, an honest, real discussion about replacing a facility.
I mean, how long would it take to reform criminal justice?
Decade? It may take it more than a decade. The list of things that need to be done under their scenario will take probably 10 to 15 to 20 years to fully implement themselves, and that's if they work at all. We've got to remember that over the last decade, 2 decades, we've had very little reduction in prison population. It's remained pretty stable.
DOC records show over the last 20 years, the adult male prison population in Wisconsin has remained virtually unchanged.
And guess what? Our facilities have not. They've started to deteriorate. We haven't been investing in them, and now we have one of them, Green Bay Correctional Institute, that's on the verge of catastrophic failure. And I tell you what, the state of Wisconsin will be criminally liable if they fail to respond to this before something major happens.
Governor Evers has been in office 5 years now. What criminal justice reform have they implemented to accomplish this?
They haven't implemented anything. They haven't done anything. The only criminal justice reform, if you will, that actually he has done is he's been pardoning people. And that is one of the powers that's available to every governor in Wisconsin. But we haven't had any substantial criminal justice reform. And I've been willing to work with him on it, but I got to tell you what, we haven't seen much leadership from him on it. And if it's going to take 10 to 15 to 20 years for it to fully implement himself, GBCI doesn't have that long. We can't hold on another 20 years on a facility that the architects and engineers have said is a top priority for closure and is failing 5 of the major building codes.
In addition to the deteriorating physical condition of the aging prison, the Department of Corrections is also challenged with GBCI being over capacity and understaffed. And the well-being of the inmates has also been questioned. Fox 11's Ben Krumholtz has more from the inmates' perspective.
Edward Austin thought he had seen the worst when it comes to life in prison. That was until he was booked into Green Bay Correctional Institution in the midst of a 5-year sentence for violent crimes and burglary.
I understand prison is prison, but I've been to prison in Illinois, and they say that's the worst prison of all. No, Green Bay is the worst.
Austin says he hasn't been outside this year, has recently been lucky to receive the state-mandated 2 showers per week, and has extreme difficulty getting mental health treatment.
To get their attention, you have to yell out your cell that you're going to kill yourself so you can get their attention. It's not a place for a human. I wouldn't even put my dog in this place.
Austin's complaints are nearly identical to ones another inmate's mother shared with us. She asked us to hide her identity out of fear of retaliation against her son, who's serving a life sentence for murder.
My son hasn't seen sunlight all year. He's had 55 minutes of rec all year, not just all week, but all year. I know they're not in the Hilton, they're in prison, but they still had, if this was an animal shelter, it would be shut down already. This is inhumane treatment.
Letters to Fox 11 from other inmates and family of inmates outlined the same criticisms. Inmate Antonio Shepard, who is in the middle of a 7-year sentence for armed robbery and kidnapping, writes there's no rehabilitation here. It's nothing but chaos. He ends a 3-page letter saying his life, health, and safety is at risk. We asked the Department of Corrections for an interview about the conditions at Green Bay Correctional Institution. A spokesperson declined, but provided some answers to questions we provided in an email. He lays blame with the inmates. Deputy Director of Communications Kevin Hoffman writes the prison has been under modified movement since June 19th due to multiple incidents of assaultive behavior towards staff and other persons in the state's care.
We are not in lockdown.
Department of Corrections Secretary Kevin Carr explained what a modified movement is to a legislative committee this past week.
We are in a state of modified movement, which means everything that would normally be happening to a certain degree, okay, not all things, but most things that are important, continue to happen, but they just happen at a slower pace.
That's colorful department talk for lockdown.
The DOC says the prison reviews the modified movement status each week and has been incrementally increasing the number of persons who participate in activities. After that first email from the DOC spokesperson, we followed up, pointing out that parts of his answer contradict what inmates are saying about a lack of outdoor time. We asked for a percentage of inmates that receive outdoor time and how consistently they get it. He told us he doesn't have a percentage and believes what we're being told doesn't make any sense. Hoffman says modified movement was put in place on June 19th, so he doesn't know how anyone is saying they haven't been outside all year unless there are circumstances unrelated to the modified movement.
To me, it's no justice.
Edward Austin admits he has received conduct reports. The mother of the inmate who doesn't want to be identified says the same thing. However, both separately explained conduct reports for similar actions.
We wash our clothes with our hands, so ain't nowhere to hang it up. So we hang strings and stuff on our door to dry our clothes. And they say we can't do that no more.
Multiple people also said inmates received conduct reports for using clothes or sheets to block an opening at the bottom of their cell doors, and also for hanging garbage from the cell doors. The inmates say they do both to keep mice out. Fox 11 was the first to report on complaints of mice infestation in July, after several complaints from inmates. The Department of Corrections had said it addressed the issue, but inmates and family members say the problem persists.
We have 2 contracts with pest control folks that go into Green Bay weekly to monitor that situation and deal with that situation.
While inmates are being written up for things like trying to keep mice out of their cells, It is supposedly keeping them from outdoor time, getting prison jobs, or educational opportunities. More serious infractions result in trips to a restrictive housing unit. Multiple people say inmates are purposely taking that route because it comes with outdoor recreation time.
Why wouldn't you misbehave? Why wouldn't you cause trouble? Why wouldn't you attack another inmate if the reward is going to the hole and having wrecked?
People do crimes in here just to get out of this joint, to go to a different mess, because that's how bad it is here.
Multiple inmates and family members believe that the current conditions and treatment are a result of staffing shortages. DOC Secretary Kevin Carr told legislators the shortage, combined with inmate behavior, is why restrictions are in place.
When you have high vacancy rates, okay, and then you have disruptive behavior that occurs in conjunction with those high vacancy rates, you really have to slow things down.
An online dashboard shows 95 of GBCI's 232 full-time equivalent positions are vacant, nearly 41%. Meanwhile, the most recent annual report shows GBCI has an average of 913 inmates, 164 over the operating capacity.
And they're supposed to have education in there. They're supposed to have counseling in there. There's mental health crises going on all the time.
Prison not supposed to be easy. I understand that, but this I've never seen it before until I came to Green Bay. This is the worst.
In Allouez, I'm Ben Krumholz for Fox 11 Investigates.
Thanks, Ben. Acting Secretary Carr, in his testimony to legislators during his appointment process, outlined what he believes to be the role of the Wisconsin prison system.
We're responsible for the safe, secure, and humane treatment of those individuals as they begin their successful reintegration back into the community. We help individuals correct their behavior and become better citizens so the cycle doesn't repeat and our communities are safer.
Is it safe, secure, and humane?
GBCI is not safe, GBCI is not secure, and is definitely not humane. It is failing on all three of those elements. They have failed to deliver on one of their core requirements. And that's why we're in this situation, that we need to be acting. And because it takes 4 years to get a solution completed, it's important that we start now. It is incredibly rare for a government to see a catastrophe this far in advance. We have a responsibility to act. We need to put politics aside and start making some substantial steps forward on replacing GBCI.
My name is Joe Verdegan. I started in 1993 in the Academy for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections.
Verdegan worked as a correctional officer at GBCI for 26 years. We asked him whether closing the prison was warranted.
Well, it could be. Now, when I started in the Academy, Mark, in 1993, they were already talking about they should shut this place down. Will they ever really shut it down? You know, that day could come, but I don't know. I mean, I know now there is bipartisan support, it appears, but I guess most staff, to answer the question directly, most staff never really took talks of, they're going to close this prison down very seriously, you know.
What about rehabilitation and treatment with the lack of staffing and the lockdowns? Is that taking place the way it should?
Yeah, and that's the other issue. You know, it's called the Department of Corrections, but a lot of times there's not a lot of correcting. A couple of good examples. We used to have real good vocational programs in a lot of them, whereas the inmates would learn a trade or a skill, because they're not all lifers at Green Bay. A lot of those individuals that were locked up would take these programs and upon their release would become productive members of the society. But unfortunately, what happened a lot is the people in Madison, and that's both parties too, both Democrats and Republicans, would cut the vocational programs, which actually helped a lot of those guys.
The prison is located in Allouez, where Jim Rafter is president of the village board.
You are among the local leaders and lawmakers who wrote letters to the governor saying the place should be shut down. What was your headline to the governor?
The headline to the governor is, it's time to close GBCI. It's time to work together, the governor's office and the legislature, to do the right thing.
And did he respond?
Well, I've met with the governor or governor's staff a couple of times, met with Secretary Carr a couple of times, And the message has always been, or has been over the last year, we need to have criminal justice reform prior to closing a prison. That's the message I've gotten. And it's not a message that I agree with.
Yeah. Allouez has another vested interest in this. It's a valuable piece of land.
Correct.
So if the prison were gone, the plan is to do some economic development there.
To redevelop it into something extremely special.
Yeah.
Something that the community can gather around and be in, live, enjoy themselves. We want to create a place where people want to get together. Yeah. And it wouldn't hurt to develop the property into something that would generate about $2 to $3 million a year in property tax.
It would be a worthwhile improvement to the Village of Allouez.
It sure would. It sure would. There is simply not a good reason not to close GBCI. It's not safe. It's not safe for the guards. It's not safe for the inmates. They can't get people to work there, even if they go to $33 an hour. The staffing shortage is the exact same today as it was back in August. They're not getting people to work there. I've talked to ex-staff or retired staff from GBCI. I've talked to ex-inmates from GBCI, and they all tell the same story. Within those four walls, it's a terrible place. And I'm not faulting those who are working there. I'm not faulting those who are running the correction system. What I'm faulting them for is not acting on something that they should be acting on, and everyone agrees.
Allouez contracts with the Brown County Sheriff's Office to handle police calls, including those to GBCI. Many of those calls from the prison result in full-blown investigations for everything from assault to arson to murder. Rafter says the violence is getting worse.
As of October of this year, there have been, I think, 54 investigations at GBCI on either inmate-on-inmate assaults or inmate-on-staff assaults. Last year, I believe there were 41, and in 2021, there were 35. So we've already surpassed all of last year. We're on target to surpass both 21 and 22 combined, and they've been on lockdown since June. You know, when we started this out many years ago to try and close GBCI, it was for economic development. The more we learn and the more I learn, it's a terrible place, and it should be closed for many, many reasons.
The debate over closing GBCI has been ongoing for more than a decade. All sides now agree shutting down Green Bay Correctional is inevitable. How to accomplish that is the sticking point. I'm Mark Leland. Hopefully our Fox 11 Town Hall discussion and raising the question, what is the future of Green Bay's prison, will keep the decision makers and those impacted talking.
I think we have an opportunity yet. I'm still going to remain optimistic, but it's going to take a little bit of change and approach and viewpoint, especially putting aside politics.
That doesn't mean that there isn't room for us to have a frank and honest discussion.
I know there's people willing to talk. We just have to talk.